So I hope all is working with the sharing the screen. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am Yvon Le Caro. As Katharina said, I am a teacher and researcher in Rennes 2 University in Rennes in Brittany, in Western France, involved in a lab called ESO, Space and Societies, a huge lab. I am vice chair of the lab now, in charge of the scientific life of the lab. And if you want, I could answer to some question on the lab at the end of the presentation. Very happy to be in Cheltenham by the glory of the internet, and to contribute to the CCRI seminar. And I will shortly, briefly give an overview of two of my research programs. Choose between all, and hope you will have some question and some questions at the end. So we have not so many time, so I will go on. And the general question is, which is worrying me, is the cooperation and the sharing of the space between farmers and non-farmers. So I try to come to this question in different way, and I will show you two of the ways I investigated in the past. The first one is the share of the land for recreation. So the farmland is a space for dwelling of the farmers and also other people for work, farming work, but also for recreation and also for mobility, because there are public right-of-way in England or chemin in France, and that are the four function of the space in the Athens Charter. And so we can, with this question, understand how land is really shared between individual people. That will be the first talk. The second one is another survey on the axiology, I don't know in English exactly, the values of the land in the mind and in the practices of different kind of stakeholders, farmers, non-farmers, local councillors, etc. And we can say that for the recreational use of farmland, I am more in a praxeological approach around uses and practices. And in the research on the values, I am more in an axiological approach, with trying to find what gives a value to the land. So first, the recreation. The questions I had at the beginning, the first question was, is farmland a recreational place and space, or is it only a working space and you have country parks or recreational bases or parks for recreation? So is it possible to say as a geographer that farmland is a recreational space? That was the first question. Because when I began the research in '92, last century, the administrations and the farmers associations answered no. And I had the project to show that the answer is yes. So that was the first issue. The second one is, who has recreation in the farmland, where, how, to do what, to know better of what is happening in the countryside in terms of recreation. And the third question was, what happens in between people when they meet? Are there a lot of conflicts or agreement, and why and how? And it was the social approach of my geography. So I had to investigate the law, the multifunctionality, and the social interactions. Globally, we can say that survey was really a social geography approach of agricultural spaces. And that was my PhD. I began in '92, I finished in 2002, and I am going on trying to understand what happens in that field. The methodology was to, because I was working, I was not appointed at the university at the moment. So I chose 3 fields in a department just on the other side of the channel for you, in Ille-et-Vilaine. 3 locations, 1 in peri-urban, 1 in rural, and 1 on the coastal areas, to know better of the if there are differences. The farm survey was by questionnaires, and perhaps the more important, and I will give you some results, was the 16 farms I investigate in depth with what I called wearing wellies interviews, des interviews bottes aux pieds. That is going in the farm with the farmer, and there is no really an interview conductor. The conductor is the landscape. And what happens when we see, what we talk about, gives a lot of idea of questions about the uses and the representations. I did also a survey between the users, the recreationists, so with the questionnaires, and a lot of interviews with the stakeholders, for instance, the head of the hunters in the department, or the head of Ramblers Association, that kind of people. The first question was answered very easily, because 100% of the farms were in interaction with recreationists. So no one farm says, no, I don't see anybody. I am only in a working space and not in a recreational space. Because in France, the hunting is very popular. So in the space, 84% of the farms were in contact with hunters, but you see also 41 with footpaths, 26 with mountain bike, and no one with nothing. So I was able to answer, yes, farmland is a recreational space, and even if there is nothing that is signposted or I don't know in English, what is formal, but by the practices and the uses, it is a recreational space. So when you come at the level of the farm, from the point of view of farmers, here is a farm, a small dairy farm, and because of the roads are in, I don't know in Aix, so I don't know in English what is that, but the cows are only on one side on the grass, and all the farm is in a crop with corn and wheat rotating. And so when you see this farm, you can say it is in a peri-urban area. You can think there is no signposted pathway. There is nothing official or formal that can say there is a recreational use of that farm. But when I finished the survey, I had that map. So all what is in color is with hunters, with family hunting here and public hunting here. Because the brother of the farmer wanted to keep the family, historical family fields in the hunting group of the cousins, the family shooting. You have also, with all these dots, we have an enormous quantity of people walking, biking, riding. There is one from the top right of the screen to the left of the screen. There is one way that is in the municipality documents. So, but all the others are just informal. So people can go along the small roads, but they can go also in all the rural paths, and where the farmer is used to go with the tractors. You see in yellow, no, in pink, here you have all the circulation of the tractors and the animals, and the same ways are used by the cows and by the citizens for recreation. You can see also that a large part of the farm is interesting for picking. So on the grass here, they pick mushrooms. Even in September, there is a road here on the top left of the slide in the south, and there is a road, and the students of my university come here, and in September they try to find mushrooms to be stoned. Okay, hallucinogen mushrooms, and so the farmers is smiling. It is the reality of that farm. And also here you can have people coming to pick chestnuts or blackberries and that kind of things along the paths. So the recreational map of the farm is very rich, and that is what I wanted to show. That is really intimate contact between the rural and the urban in the recreational uses of farmland. The commune here is 8,000 inhabitants, 12 kilometers from Rennes. So there are a lot of people willing to discover the open space. Just more quickly, another farm, very different structure, bigger, with a very concentrated structure, and it is in organic farming with a lot of grass and very few crop. And here you have the farmer is going with the cows in all the fields. So the rural passes are also really agricultural passes. He needs the passes to go in the fields, and here are the recreational uses. So a lot of people picking mushrooms, all is hunting. On that farm, the French rule is very complicated for hunting, but in that commune and in that farm, the farmer could refuse the shooting, public shooting. He can say, I keep the hunting for me, because he is sufficiently large. And he didn't it, and he said me that he let the hunters come because he said, I have a sufficiently large property. So there is a social transaction between owners and citizens to say, I am with a large property, so you can come to shoot. That is very different from England, I suppose. You can see also here there is a small lake just used to find the water for the cows, and so, and he don't accept the public fishing. He lets just neighbors fishing. Yeah, I am going a little bit quicker. So the third commune was along the sea, just on the other side for you, and it is growing vegetables, so chou-fleur and I don't know, cauliflowers, I think, and other vegetables. The farm is relatively small, and there are a lot of use also, and with the seaside, there are very many people coming there, and he had problem because people want to reach the sea crossing through the fields. So if the official ways are a little bit complicated, so the farmers itself made ways for people to go to the sea easily without destroying the crops. And also you can see here there is a castle with the gardens of the castle and the wood of the castle. It is aristocratic property, and all the passes around the castle are private. They are not public rural passes, but they are private passes owned by the landlord, and he lets the people come and go through with bike or by foot. And in France, I think, as the hunting in the previous farm, it is a kind of compensation, post-revolutionary compensation from the French Revolution. And so the people find, okay, it's as normal that you can use something that is private as a path. So that study was the first one in France to show how the working space and the recreational space combined together with some problems. And I wrote in the thesis the solution the farmers found with the users to improve the situation. Very, very, very few conflicts on that topic are coming in front of the courts in France. Only around hunting, but yeah, we can say with hunting there are some conflicts on the agenda of the courts, but it is the exception. Really, generally, the solutions are found by people, by stakeholders themselves. I don't see my own because of the Zoom. So why, how can we explain such tolerance and such a multifunctionality? The first point for you British people is that only in England, in Europe, trespass is an offense. Everywhere, either in the other country in Europe, trespass isn't an offense. So in France, we have a constitutional right to go back and forth. So liberté d'aller et de venir. That is that to put the foot on a private property is not an offense. That is the key point, the first one. The second point is that by law or by tolerance, the traditional rural recreation activities as hunting, fishing, picking that are from the pre-Neolithic, the Paleolithic ages are tolerated. So this lady on the picture is in a private grassland. She is picking mushroom. Probably she don't ask for it, but if the farmer come, he will say, "Hello, lady, all is all right?" And she will say, "Yeah, excellent. I have some mushrooms." Point. No more problems. So in some areas in France where mushrooms have a commercial value, farmers say, okay, the law is that the mushrooms are for the owners. So you can have conflicts only when the mushrooms have a commercial value. But here there is no commercial value, so no problem. So this tolerance, I think in France, it is based on the revolution conception of the property, but it is very different in Scandinavia or in Spain or in Italy. So I cannot develop all the countries. The third point is that we have a huge network of rural passes. I will give you some statistics comparing Devon and Ille-et-Vilaine, because sometimes in England, because your public right-of-ways are signposted along the roads, you feel that you have a huge network of passes, but the comparison of figures is giving a different perspective. Here you have just the map with all these black straits are rural passes dedicated to the tractors, the cows, and the footpath. So we have around 800,000 kilometers in France remaining, because we had more before. Theoretically, I think the rural path, the bridle way for you, something as a bridle way, it is a real physical structure going in between the fields and not in the middle of the fields, is a public property, a private property of the commune. So the commune can sell it, but it is dedicated to the public use. So it is in between public-private status, and it is going through private land, through the farm businesses, through the forest. But from a geographical point of view, it is also a part of the farmland, because farmers need it to go with tractors, with cows. So in terms of functionality, it is included in the agricultural space, but it is also included in the mobility public network. So it is a structure that is in a kind of hybridation between agricultural use and public use. On the point of view of recreation, we can say that the rural passes are the doors of the countryside, giving access to the countryside to citizens and particularly to the urban dwellers. We have the chance to have a significant network of ways using the rural passes as an infrastructure and giving to these passes signification for rambling and walking. And what is that? Yeah, I tried to compare with Devon. And so I came in Exeter in '99 to have a literature review. I said I read all what the Countryside Commission published one by one to understand what happened in England. And then I made some first interviews. Then I came back 10 years later to investigate with farmers and also planners. It was very interesting to understand the point of view of British farmers on the public uses of the countryside, because it's so different from France. And I think my conclusion are a very unequal access for field sport. I think it is radically different from France, so I will not come over more in depth on that point. That is just a testimony in an interview, but even in France, we have a difference between the 3 departments under the German law in Lorraine and Alsace and the whole France. In the whole France, we have different law for hunting, so it is very complicated. But we can say, for us, generally in France, the traditional rural leisure, hunting, fishing, picking, are easy, and the more urban leisure as walking, riding, biking are also easy. So there is a balance between traditional and more contemporary uses, and in England I think it's different, but perhaps you know more than me. The public right-of-way system from the 49 Act are very interesting for us as a study object, and it is an opportunity to tackle with trespass, but with some weaknesses that we see from the French point of view. The compulsory mapping is really something very, very good that we have not in France. So a large part of the ways are not on the maps in France. Only some from the French National Rambling Association are on the maps, but all the local municipal trails are not on the map. So you have one point in Britain. Then you have also problems. For instance, public right-of-way are not ways, are not routes. They are sticks of right-of-way, but they don't make a network very useful. So that is something we have in France with the rural passes, but not with signposted passes that go nowhere. It is something we don't have. When I try to compare, I say also that in France we signpost all along the path. You signpost only on the road. So when I am going there, I don't know exactly where is the path in the grass. So I have to have a map and a compass. You can have to go through the cows, but sometimes in France too, but in England, in Devon, it is very often, and it is a problem for urban dwellers. They don't know if they can. Here you see there is, I don't know if you see my arrow, but these animals are not only female. You can have also a bull, so it is perhaps a little bit dangerous. What is also specific to England is the business recreation. We have very few in France, only for horse rider, for equestrian activities, but you have a lot, much more. I know the statistic is very different. And also we have not this notion of country parks. So all the whole agricultural space is a country park in France, we can say that, but it is largely informal. And that the difference, I think it is very interesting. It could be very interesting to compare country parks in England and the recreation system in France, because some country parks exist, but they are an exception. Here is the comparison between the figures. So we are in two departments in France, a county in England, with the same amount of population, the same surface, the same distance with the capital, London and Paris, the same agriculture with dairy cows in the two departments. And you have 5,000 kilometers of public right-of-way, and we have 15,000 kilometers of rural passes. But what is really, I have to change it, yeah. What is very surprising is that we have the same kilometers of signposted network, but in between this signposted network, your system of public right-of-way lets only 1,500 kilometers of routes. But all what is signposted in France is a route. You can walk and come back. So the use is different. I think for urban dwellers, it's easier in France because they have routes. And in England, for local inhabitants, they can deal with the public right-of-way, find solution. But for people coming from away, it is a little bit difficult to draw a route, but perhaps now with the internet and with the GPS, you can try to do it, but it is different. So we have a huge potential with these 15,000 kilometers and a good signposted network. You have also a good signposted network, but the usable routes are more scarce. I have no time to go in depth in that figures. She's online. I wrote with Andrew Gilk from the countryside planning in Exeter, a paper in '99, and we tried to see the different recreation outdoor activities in France and in England, classified by who can come and selective versus inclusive access. And so we can say that, yeah, access is more easy in France, but depending on the leisure, there are some complicated combination. And so I think it is interesting to compare the two experiences. To conclude this first part, agricultural land is a landscape, a scenery, an heritage, and all that is very strong in Devon. Also in France, but it is put on the desk in Devon. And in France, in Brittany, it's more an open space and a resource. And it is also in England, but perhaps with more, with the trespass and with the landlordship, it is much more complicated. So in the both case, the question is, what means agricultural land for the community? And it means by the uses, as we saw in this first part, and it means by the values, and as we will see in the second part. So the second part is the question of the values. So for that, the question was only one, what in the social and cultural perspectives is giving a value to agricultural land for different local stakeholders in Western France. So the theoretical background is the urbanization of the countryside. The question is that urbanization is going through three, I say, trois voies, so the three ways, the three forms of urbanization of the countryside. The first one is the spatial artificialization with these new houses built just at the end of the farm. The second one is the back to land and the counter urbanization with new incomers with urban background coming in the villages. And the third one is the urbanization of minds. The dialogue between urban citizens and rural inhabitants, here cows, is very fruitful. And I tried to make this dialogue possible inside the research project with the focus groups. To approach the rural axiology, we say axiology or axiology, I don't know in English. I used the background in France of the farm sociology with the peasantry and the peasant ages finishing around the 50s in France with Henri Mandras, and in that paradigm, the farmland is a property cornerstone of the family. You have the land from your father and you give to your son, and it is what we call in France, in French we call it un bien fond. That is, as for the aristocracy, the land is at the basis of the family line, you know. During the 50s, we had the agricultural revolution with the professionality and farmer as a job. And in that paradigm, farmland is a work tool. We fight to the motto was land to those who work it. So that is the main paradigm nowadays. But from the 90s is coming what I call a reflexive paradigm, with the idea that that is the conclusion of Nicole Croix, saying that farmland is now the place of public issues as water protection, biodiversity, landscape, recreational access, etc., etc. And from this sociological and geographical literature, I cross it with my previous study, saying that in between the farmers and the recreationists, three values were used to find agreements. The first one was the respect of the nature, was the integration of nature as an integrating concept. Anybody's agree that we have to take care of nature. The second one is the work, the farm work. Recreationists know that they are in a workspace, and farmers want to be respected as workers. And the third one is the respect, and not the respect in English, I don't know, to take care of the ownership. You are in the field of someone. These three levers of agreement can be connected with the three paradigms of farmers in the farm sociology in France. So that will be my three first hypotheses: ownership, work, nature. I will come back. I had another source, very interesting, 1959. Webberley spoke about the need and desire of land and uneasy peace. It is a very, very interesting paper. And I go quick on the paper itself, you can come back to it. He said that land uses, so the allocation of land between farm, forest, nature, and urban, and the demography are connected with the food inside, in between, and the question of zoning versus multifunctionality, so land share versus land sparing, is central to understand how that works. What I found from that is that food is a key value connecting demography and farmland. Second, sociability is the key lever to understand how farmers can be integrated in the community and how non-farmers can be find a place in the land as it is allocated, and the question of landscape as a cultural interpretation of the land allocation. So with my 3 first flavor from the first study and the 3 others here, I had the idea that there are a lot of values around farmland. Then I tried to think how I will combine these values in my theoretical framework. So I had the reference of, perhaps you know it, it is French, but it is Greek, Boltanski and Thévenot, 1987, that they say that we human beings find agreements, but we generally disagree on the reasons why we are happy. So you can say, okay, with somebody, but the 2 people are okay, but not for the same reasons. And the question is, are the values compatible, or can they work together, or are they opposite one by one? So this theoretical background, and I point what they say, Boltanski and Thévenot, and they say we can be in a merchant paradigm, say the balance between price and quality, a domestic system with the care of the people, with the civic, what is good for all, with the industrial, we do what we say what we do, and so the inspiring, the beauty, the quiet enjoyment of English countryside is in the inspiring farmland paradigm. And the last one is the distinctive, with I am the only one who enjoyed this landscape. So with the Bourdieu theory of the distinction. And for instance, in England, the work of Marion Chouard and others saying that the wealthy keep the countryside for itself and let the people in the honeypots, in the country parts and so on. So that is the distinctive. So I didn't work directly on that frame because my aim was not to say about the values, but to know the values. So I used the theoretical background, but I put my hypothesis in the flower. So that gives a new flower with work, nature, and ownership from my first study, and sociability, food, and landscape from the interpretation of Weberly analysis. And then I came to a survey. In 3 regions in France, I need to take about hour, but I think, yeah. I went to Normandy, to Brittany, and to Charentes in between during the 2010s. And then you see all the field trips are not in the middle of the metropolis, but they are just on the fringe, in the place we called rural space in transition from the rural to the urban, place where this urbanization of the countryside is effective. And so it was in a large project with other colleagues, but that is my study inside. So I decided to organize focus groups inspired by the Burgess, Lim and Harrison study in London on the access to the countryside in 1988. Very, very interesting job. And I did not the same, because I had not the same means, but I tried to copy. And it was very interesting. With for the first time, I distinguished farmers and farm women in my work. It was the first time I introduced the gender dimension in my methodology. And then non-farmers, inhabitants and activists, and other stakeholders, particularly municipal councillors. So all the groups with the dark dot are transcripts. So I was enabled to make a lexicometric analysis of what they said. So that are 2 groups at work, with the women in Brittany and the landowners in Normandy. And I used a software to process my data with all the pages and the text. I clean it, I codify it, and then I use the Hermetic software to lemmatizze and to organize the words, and with a dissonant hierarchical classification, find dendrogram. I will show you some dendrograms, and then with the factorial analysis made by the logiciel, by the software, I am not a statistician, I can show you some clouds of proximities. And the idea is to see, I hoped I will find my hypothesis in the clouds. So we are now going to the clouds. So that is the dendrogram for all the 10 focus groups, 200,000 forms. So it is a huge, relatively huge set of forms. And in English, I can easily find the sociability, the access, the question of meeting between people, the relation to the nature, the landscape, the work, the ownership, no problem. The main problem is that food has a very, very small occurrence. It is difficult to find reference to food. And the focus groups were investigated on what are your uses of farmland, why has farmland a value, is it easy to buy farmland, and the food was really not the main topic. The cloud gives a proximity between sociability and nature, and a proximity between ownership and food, and between work and landscape. That is for all the people together. When I connect the 4 focus groups with farms, food is nowhere. That's really a result. That's really something interesting. But you find all the others keywords without problems. And the cloud gives a difference between 2 kinds of work, the work on the farm and the work for landscape. And that is typical to farmers groups. Landscape and ownership are connected as for the wool group, but sociability and nature are very, very disconnected. And that is very interesting because we have some studies, not mine, but others, saying that in France, even in the grain plains, as La Beauce, there are a lot of recreational uses and public access. So in France, the access to the countryside is disconnected from the landscapes. And that is very different from Britain on that point of view. Then when you see, so this distance is on the field, when you see the others, they forget also the food, the non-farmers. And yeah, I don't come in the detail, but for instance, the work of farmers is very present in what they say. So that is interesting for farmers to know that their work is recognized, but not the food. The link between farm and food is really a problem in an urban society. Perhaps also a well-nourished, with people without food problem. So these non-farmers have a cloud with no food, with a distance also between sociability and nature, and disconnection between landscape and ownership that is strong in France. I think we in France think that landscape is made by and is made for landowners, farmers. And in England, I think farmers do manage the landscape to build their legitimacy or their legitimacy with the country. But in France, now it is their affair. The landscape is in the farm side, and for the better and for the worst.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Yvonne. I was just wondering if you might conclude, because I'm sure we have lots of questions for you.
Conclude,
we won't have enough time otherwise.
On the
Lovely, thank you.
Excuse me. Conclusion. So, some conclusion. We can say that values associated with the farmland are really work, sociability, ownership, landscape, and nature, and that there is a problem with the hypothesis around food. The second thing is that ownership and landscape are connected, and that is really a problem for the public policies about landscape. So you cannot, in France, you can't impose or force farmers to do the landscape you want. They do the landscape they want to do, point. And all the experiences showed it is very difficult to make a cut in between ownership and landscape. The second one is the link between sociability and nature. And this link is, there is a link, but this link is very different from one kind of type of stakeholders to the others. And the link between work and landscape is really good for non-farmers. Lexicometry is very helpful, but opens some areas of perplexity, and I think there are many rivers to cross to explore such a huge topic. Thank you for attention, and I will just let you discover the references and answer some questions. I will give you the slides, and you will find here some data on my lab, but I think perhaps we can talk about my presentation now. Thank you very much for attention.
Well, thank you very much, Yvon. It's been really interesting, and it's also very interesting always to hear a comparison between countries and how the same issues are tackled and what differences could be seen. And we can come to the labs perhaps in a separate presentation later on. I think there might be some possibilities. So I'll hand over to Julie, maybe to facilitate the discussion. We have a few more minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. I learned a lot there. That was fascinating. I think it resonates a lot with lots of debates at the moment about land use that we're having, well, across Europe, particularly when it comes to growing food crops. Having stood in a field of miscanthus bioenergy crop yesterday, it's very topical. Anyway, please put your questions in the chat, or put up a hand if you'd like to say something. This is more of a comment than a question from Kate, who tells us she's had a 260-acre organic farm a while ago and would have loved to have heard about this research then. So I don't know if you'd like to expand on that, Kate?
Yeah, I would actually. Thank you for a very interesting analysis. I rather wish I was an analyst, but I'm not. I'm an economic geographer who ended up farming. But the point you made right at the very end really appealed to me about how food is not linked into so many farmers, or for that matter, customers, potential customers' experience. But when you do make that link, which was what I did on my farm, it works brilliantly. We had a whole network of footpaths. The people who used them, they're the public rights of way, understood because of what we were doing, what they would be doing, so that they didn't cause us any problems. We kept only British breeds, so we didn't have too much of a problem with ferocious bulls because they tend to be rather easier going. The whole thing worked because people understood that we were growing food, and then we would sell them the food at the end, and we were part of the network. That has been eroded considerably now. One of the reasons why I gave up was that the abattoir network was being gradually centralized in the interests of efficiency. No comment. With the result that people like me found it impossible to operate effectively. But there are some rays of hope now. I'm a board member of the Cotswolds National Landscape, and there we are making the links. We do sign our footpaths, I may say, with very nice yellow signs, so that people don't get lost. But we also are making a links between food and farming and landscape, because if you lose those contacts, as you say, you lose the reason for conserving any of them.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to keep it in people's minds. So thank you for your talk. I found it, I want to hear it again so that I can write down what I missed.
Yeah, I am also a farmer, and I am also having paper trees and trying to sell food. And my wife was a vegetables grower, and people, I think there is a difference between the food is, when we speak about food, people connect to farmland, but when we speak about farmland, people forget to think to food. The relation is asymmetric. I think, yeah, there is something we have to understand in a better way. People who come to buy products in the farmland, at the farm, they are very interested, and I wrote about that, about the role of food as a mediator between the farmland and the urban spaces, with the farmer as a key person giving the keys. But I was surprised of my own results. So I think there is just a deal for research on that point. Yeah, that was an interrogation. I have no answer. Yeah.
Jenny, a question from you. Jenny says, I'm really interested in your thoughts on how your research reflects on how easy land use change might be or not be in the light of climate change targets.
Yeah, when I had these focus groups discussion, the climate change was not in the middle of the table, but I would say farmers are used to deal with big challenges. Feeding the cities during at the middle of the 20th century, find a way to deal with the environmental issues from for 40 years now, and they have to deal with the climate change. I think there are two ways. If they don't take care, they will just have problems, additive problems in the competition, and access to the market will be more and more complicated. And for citizens, they will have problems to find food. Okay, perhaps. But the other way is to say climate change is perhaps one new paradigm, enabling farmers and non-farmers to talk and find solutions together. Because for me, a good introduction is to speak about energy. If we have a problem with climate change, we need local energy, so we dedicate a large part of the land to produce energy. But we have also a problem with the crops from the climate change. We have a lack of food, so we have to use climate change to build a new dialogue between farmers and consumers. I think it's the key. We have to do with the climate change what we didn't do with the environmental issues in the 70s in France, where the ecologists were in the urban and the farmers in the rural, and the farmer says there is no ecological problem and we will wait. They wait 20 years, and in 94 they were tackled by the law. So I think I say to the farmers, take care. Climate change is not against farmers. It is a drama for the humanity, and you can find allies to find solutions with the consumers. But at the moment, they feel it more than one more tax, one more problem coming from outside. But I think we have to deal with that. And it is very important when we are teachers in planning or in environmental master degrees to to get inside that key point of farmers and the climate change. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Any pressing questions or comments they would like to make?
Yeah, I have a hand up.
Janet would like to
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your
That's
hand.
all right. I think my hand is very pale for some reason. Thank you very much, Yvon. That was really interesting. I was very struck by your final comments about the fact that in France, you think that people feel that the landscape is the farmer's kind of space to determine, which is really different, I think, from the situation in England in particular. And I'm wondering about whether it's because of the role of law and institutions in the English context, you know, with the 1949 Act, with the planning policy coming from the center of government rather than being devolved to the level of the communes, as much of it was in France. And I think on the back of that, and also in light of the role of the NGOs, so the National Trust in the UK being very strong with the whole idea that, in a sense, I think a lot of people feel the landscape is a public thing. You know, we all have, the landscape belongs to us, even though the land is private and the management of the landscape is the domain of the private landowner. And I wonder whether, you know, sometimes maybe we professionalized it too much, and that this is where now the conflict arises because of the knowledge of the people who live there, who work the land and manage the landscape, and the people who come and look and say, this landscape is mine and it has all these important features. But anyway, just, I don't know how you feel about that.
I wrote a paper that was just a picture of landscape in England, in France, and in Japan. And the conclusion was that in the building of the legitimacy of farmers in each country, they have to deal with the local society, with the cultural landscape of the country. And in England, landscape is the deal with between farmers and the society. Farmers I talked with during the interview said, with landscape, that is our contribution, because we have the land. English people don't love us. They say we are enclosure, we are bad people with a lot of land. But we have one quality, we take care about the English landscape. In France, the same kind of agreement is made around access. We are farmers, we have land, but we let you hunt, walk, take picture, take mushrooms, and landscape is in the private court of the farmers. But in England, access is in the private court of the owner. They can sell the hunting rights, sell the fishing rights, tackle the public right of way, saying just you go through, you have styles. If you have if you are with your children, you cannot go because there are bulls. So I think each country find the agreement. In Japan, something else. So I think landscape has a special status in England, as access as a special status in France for farmers. And that is the cultural background of the rural urban interface that is very different from one country to another. That's why the cross-channel comparisons are so fruitful in that field. Yeah, really.
Interesting. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your contribution. I'm sure if anybody else has some pressing questions, they can contact you directly.
You can write and ask questions to me.
Yes, and thank you for putting us in touch, Brittany.
Yeah,
good.
It was a very pleasant
lovely. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
See you all, everybody.
We'll see you on the 7th of April. Oh, yeah, for the next seminar.
Coming thick and fast now. Yeah.
Thanks
Good.
a lot.
Bye.
Bye.